Welcome to Reformed Thinking. Today, we're jumping into the Book of Ruth. It's this incredibly personal story, but it's also historically huge, and it's set during one of the darkest times in Israel's history, the time of the Judges. This line right here, this is the heart of the whole book. It's a foreign widow declaring her loyalty to her Israelite mother-in-law. And it's just a perfect picture of what true faith looks like, showing that you can't separate your love for God from your love for His people. Okay, so a story of emptiness. It all starts with a family from Bethlehem. You've got Elimelech, his wife Naomi, and their 2 sons. A famine hits, so they pack up and flee to Moab, a foreign country that, by the way, was founded on a pretty messed up relationship and was often an enemy of Israel. But things just go from bad to worse. All the men die, Elimelech and then both of his sons. You're left with 3 widows with no one to provide for them and basically no future. Naomi, whose name means pleasant, is so crushed by all this that she later tells people to call her Mara, which means bitter. Just devastating. So the bond of Hesed. Faced with this bleak future, Naomi tells her daughters-in-law, go back home to your own people. And this moment right here, this is a major turning point. It forces them to make a choice that really shows what they're made of. Now, to really get what's happening, you have to understand this Hebrew word Hesed. It gets translated as kindness or love, but it's so much more than that. It's this idea of sacrificial covenant loyalty. It's the kind of help you give to someone who is absolutely helpless and can do nothing to save themselves. So you've got 2 widows and 2 very different paths. Orpah makes the logical choice, right? She lives by sight. She goes back home. But Ruth, she makes a choice of faith. She literally clings to Naomi and her God. It's this perfect contrast between doing what's conventional and self-serving versus doing something sacrificial that ends up writing you into salvation history. All right, the family protector. Ruth and Naomi arrive back in Bethlehem with nothing. So to support them, Ruth starts gleaning, gathering leftover grain from the fields. And by what looks like pure chance, she ends up in the field of a man named Boaz. Of course, we know this is no accident. This is God's providence, plain and simple. And Boaz isn't just some random landowner. The text calls him a gibor ḥayil. That means he's a man of standing, a big deal in the community. He's capable, he's wealthy, he's respected, and, key detail, he's a relative of Naomi's dead husband. This is going to be important. And that introduces another huge concept for this story, the goel. This is the family protector or kinsman redeemer. It was a real legal and social role back then, and it's totally central to the theme of redemption in this book. So, what did this family protector actually do? Well, he had a few main jobs, and they all revolved around one thing: making sure a family line didn't just die out or lose everything. He was there to protect the family's name and their inheritance for the next generation. You can actually look at the whole story like a 5-act play. It starts with Ruth leaving home, then she meets Boaz, then she makes a bold proposal. He redeems her. And the climax? The birth of a son who secures the family's future. It's a perfect move from emptiness to fullness. So, a test at the gate. Boaz is all in. He agrees to be the family protector. But there's a problem, a little legal snag. There's another male relative who's actually closer in line, and he gets first dibs. So Boaz has to handle this the right way, legally, and with total integrity. The whole thing goes down in public, at the town gate. Think of it as their ancient city hall or courthouse. It's where all the legal deals were done. So Boaz gets 10 elders together to make sure everything is official and witnessed. And what happens next is just brilliant. This other kinsman, the narrator just calls him Mr. So-and-so. He's interested at first. Yeah, I'll buy the land. Sounds like a good deal for me. But then Boaz drops the catch. You also have to marry Ruth. Suddenly, the guy backs out. It would cost him too much, endanger his own estate, he says. It's all about self-interest. But Boaz, he steps right in, willing to pay the price out of that ḥeseḍ, that sacrificial love for a family that can't pay him back. And if you kind of zoom out, you see this amazing pattern in the Old Testament. The story of Ruth and Boaz is a moral high point compared to other similar stories that came before it. You see things moving toward a more proper, public, and legal union. The Redeemer isn't forced into the role. He chooses it sacrificially. And the child born from it isn't just anyone. He's in the line of God's chosen king. And now a royal lineage emerges. Boaz marries Ruth, and the story just completely flips. It goes from emptiness to fullness, from famine to harvest, and from death to life. The whole community sees what's happened. The women celebrate with Naomi, telling her that her daughter-in-law, Ruth, is better to you than 7 sons. In that culture, that was about the highest praise you could give. Naomi, the woman who called herself bitter, is now holding her grandson. She is completely restored. They have a son and they name him Obed. His name means worker or server, and this baby boy is the sign that everything has turned around. The birth of this son is the climax of the whole book because his family line connects everything. See, Obed becomes the father of a man named Jesse. And Jesse, of course, is the father of King David, Israel's greatest king. And just like that, this very personal story of loyalty and kindness connects directly into the grand story of God's redemptive plan for his people. So, from a Christian perspective, these characters are what we call types. They point forward to something greater. Boaz acts as a type of Christ, the Redeemer, who sacrifices himself. Ruth, the foreigner, is a picture of Gentiles brought into God's family by faith. And Naomi can be seen as representing ethnic Israel, restored and filled with joy through this amazing union. So what do we take away from all this? How does a simple story about personal kindness actually ripple through history? Well, the Book of Ruth shows us that small, personal acts of Hesed, of sacrificial kindness, done by ordinary people, are exactly what our sovereign God uses to bring about his extraordinary plans for salvation.